What is your position on the extension of GRU sewer lines to subsidize rural development? Mr. Snoop.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. Again, for water and wastewater facilities, it's the most expensive form of utility service to connect on a per mile basis. Very expensive. Okay, so what that translates to is it costs millions upon millions of dollars per mile to interconnect to outlying areas. Mr. Martin's been a part of that, I believe, with Hawthorne and such like that. There's a big discussion about interconnecting wastewater out to Archer. So again, GRU is in business to keep our utility rates low. And if we're able to expand those services with the existing capability of GRU to serve, and can do so in a manner that generates revenue for the city residents, that lowers all of our taxes. And that's a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It has to be paid for by the users, not the ratepayers. And you do that through basically impact fees, assessments, and such like that. Things that we don't like to talk about. But again, if you have a community, an outline that wants to interconnect, they have to find a way to pay for that cost of service. There are federal rural grants that allow for that, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because part of the importance of water and wastewater facilities is protecting our drinking water source. That's the aquifer. With the septic tanks in Florida, they have potential to, over years, decay and leach and contaminate. And again, so I'm for interconnection on a case-by-case basis when it makes sense to do so. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bates.
I would be opposed to those being subsidized by ratepayers. I think that real estate developments should pay their own way. Oftentimes, I've sat through many city or county commission meetings where proposed real estate developments were being considered, and those representatives of the proposed real estate development would tout how much benefit their development was going to bring to the city. I don't think those figures and facts were ever typically genuine. That I felt the costs were often far exceeding what they were estimating, and they were not considering even various classes of expenses and costs of those developments to the communities. So I would be opposed to that. To deal with not having those that service in outlying areas, I would like to see waterless toilets legalized and promoted where they are not. Many of you in this room, being conservation-minded people, are aware of what those are. They're proven technologies. They do not have health problems. They're mature technologies, and we should allow them to be used where they are not. I'm also saying that if people want to pay for running those lines out there, let them do that in impact fees. Impact fees are not a bad word. They're not a bad thing. They're a good thing. They make sure that real estate development growth is compact and next to existing development. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Grundy.
First and foremost, I want to say that I've heard a couple times that impact fees were mentioned. In the city of Gainesville, it's my understanding we do not have impact fees in the city of Gainesville. That's first and foremost. Secondly, as far as interconnection or interlocal connection being subsidized by ratepayers, I have a grave concern about that. Our ratepayers are paying and bearing the burden as it is now. I am concerned about that. And then there's not only just ratepayers within the confines of the city limits, we also have GRU customers and ratepayers in the county, the urban fringes of our county. So I'm concerned about the ratepayers. GRU, this is a fact, they have a responsibility, and they do. It is part of what they do to keep, they work very hard to keep our rates low. So I have a concern about the impact to our ratepayers. Secondly, currently the most pressing thing that they were doing recently to expand having these interlocal connections was with Waldo. And I was with the county. They were sending out a wastewater line out to connect with Waldo. And that was, I believe, a 10-inch pipe that was going to be laid, and I'm not sure of the final details on where that is now. However, that was working with the county. But also, county government has a role to play also within that. But ratepayers that are out in the county pay a surcharge. So I have a little bit of concern and pause of what ratepayers will do. I think that developers who are wanting to have this future development should also help in bearing the burden with some of this future development. Ratepayers right now that are current customers, I have a little bit of concern and pause for that.
Mr. Washington.
The idea that GRU is looking out for the interests of the citizens and keeping rates low is about the most absurd thing that I've heard tonight. GRU has built a $52 million headquarters on top of Main Street. It has a health spa in it. You'll hear about this in the paper in the next few weeks, I believe, once the information has been gathered. 5- and 6-figure bonuses are being paid for GRU execs to sign. The people in District 1 are suffering, the people in the city are suffering. This is, I don't know who can see this. This is a chart that I made for this forum that we had, first forum that had been held about this biomass issue for a while. This is just comparing the neighborhoods with the utilities within a 50-mile radius of here, both public utilities that are municipal, both cooperative utilities and investor-owned utilities. GRU for 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity is already higher than every investor-owned utility in Florida, every co-op in Florida, and virtually every other municipal utility. They play around with the numbers, but this is the truth. 98.67 per 1,000 kilowatt hours, Florida Power and Light, east part of Alachua County. City of Ocala, 106. 127, 96 here, going up to 104, 140 when the biomass plant comes. I'd like to get to the question itself, but my time is out. I'm going to try to come back and I can answer the question. I have something to say about it.
All right, well, let me just remind the candidates, the question was, what's your position on the extension of GRU sewer lines to subsidize rural development? Mr. Kane.
First of all, my position on that is we need to look at other options, okay? I would like to get with other companies, and I'd like to sit around the table. You know, for some odd reason, it seems like GRU can't sit around the table with other companies, and I think we need to do that. I think we need to sit down, look what other cities are doing, and let's see what we can do. You know, if I'm not specializing in water, then I need to find somebody that is, because all I am is a city commissioner. So I don't know anything about it, but you know what? We can come to common ground and do the right thing. If I sit down with you and say, hey, talk to me about this. Tell me what's the best way. Get with the University of Florida, you know, and just get with people that know what they're talking about, and we can come to common ground. Because I'm going to tell you, people are suffering out there. People are suffering. And you know what? Gainesville used to be a place where we cared. I remember when we used to put the red things on your doors to let you know that your power was going to be cut off. We don't even do that anymore. Let's get back to what we used to do. You could at least call the people and say, hey, your license, I'm being real. Because our city commission and our GRU has gotten away from that. They don't even know how to talk to people. You can call GRU and you can ask about a customer, and I can say, do you have Miss Mary Lou's number? And they'll give you her number. Try it. I know what I'm talking about. Those are things we have to change. And unless we come together in a meeting, get our city commissioners in the meeting, and go down there and demand, pack it out, say, look, this is what we want. We'll let you do the job or get out the house. That's what we got to do. That's what I'm going to say. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Engel, sewer lines.
Sewer lines.
Sewer lines.
I'm an electrician by trade, not a plumber, so this is exactly my area of expertise.
Are we sending the sewer line out to Archer? Let's stick to the question.
So what I would say about sewer lines, like the question was, should we run these sewer lines out to subsidize rural development?
Yes.
And I'm not entirely sure that the role of the utility company needs to be subsidizing rural development. Looking at, when elected as a city commissioner, my kind of responsibility and job is going to be back to the citizens of Gainesville and the ratepayers of GRU. Trying to subsidize rural development, it seems pretty low on the list of priorities of what we should be looking at. So, thank you.
Ms. Lutz?
Well, I'm not the expert either. I don't pretend to be. The thing that I'm concerned about is, on one hand, the Gainesville City Commission is the board of directors of GRU. So we have a responsibility, because we've been elected by the people of Gainesville, to do the best thing with their money. However, GRU has expanded its provision of services beyond the city limits of Gainesville. So with that in mind, I feel like if it can be paid for, because we already have $1 $1 billion in debt service for the city of Gainesville already, then I think that if it can be physically, oh, I love that, he's gonna put it in his Twitter again. If we can be physically, F-I-S-C-A-L, he's good. If we can be responsible, yes, he does. And so I would just say that we have to do it case by case, because we are not in a position now to be irresponsible with everyone's money, because it's hard for people right now.
Ms. McFarland?
Thank you. Subsidizing, that's a tough word, because it means that you're going to pay for somebody else.
Yeah, we picked that intentionally.
I know you do. I know. And I don't like to subsidize anything, basically. I'm very conservative that way. But what I see with GRU, as first of all, I agree with Ms. Lutz as far as, I think the board of directors, that to me is a conflict of interest, because the board of directors should be in the sunshine. And if you're part of the GRU, to me, that should be part of the sunshine law also. But to go back, I know Hawthorne and Waldo, I know these small towns are asking for help for utilities. Because when you have utilities, that's when your town will grow. Because people want that. And with the things that are happening in Tallahassee with regards to septic tanks is one of the main issues that's been coming through for the last probably 5 years. There's been a study on the septic tank issues. And your small towns are 99% septic tanks, which then hurts the homeowners as far as special assessments and costs. So just to say you shouldn't do it, you should do it, I think those things have to be worked together and communicate to see how the best way to do it is, and not 100% subsidized, but maybe a special assessment for a long period of time that people can pay for it the right way in 10 years or something like that. Thank you.
Mr. Pennell?
I do not believe that GRU should subsidize rural development. There are circumstances where GRU, I think, is the perfect partner for a community to provide wastewater services, and I think the Waldo example is one of those. Waldo was in a lot of trouble. They were under order by the government because they were polluting so much due to their aged wastewater facilities. They needed help bad. They are a very small town that doesn't have a lot of resources. And so we were able to work out a plan with Waldo where GRU would provide wastewater services to them, but in a very limited capacity. We limited it to within their urban reserve, which, as you can imagine, in Waldo is pretty small. It was, their maximum increase in connections, residential connections, was something like 100. I mean, it was a very small amount. And then in between there, you have the Austin Carey State Park, and so that's undevelopable land. And so you're not going to get that sprawl. I think in the past, there were decisions made that allowed for sprawl in west central Alachua County, and that really pulled the center of momentum away from central and east Gainesville, and we're seeing the consequences of that now. And so that would be a lesson to be learned on how not to extend services into rural areas that might lead to sprawl.
Mr. Selleck?
It seems that GRU keeps on wanting to get bigger and bigger, and I'm a small government guy. I want smaller government, less taxes, more reasonable utility bills. And I think that GRU should stay within the urban services boundary line. One thing that none of the other candidates mentioned was the word annexation. And, if you want our city services, then, you should be paying higher property taxes if you want some of our city services. So, I don't want Gainesville to grow out to Waldo, but or to Archer, but I think they need to take care of their problem because we have enough of our own. Thank you.
All right, given the